Subtracting integers. So let's first do a quick review of our rules for adding integers. And our first rule would be if the numbers have the same sign, we would add them and keep that sign. Assuming we're just adding two positive numbers or two negative numbers, we would add two positive together and it would remain positive. We would add two negative numbers together, it would remain negative. The second rule for adding integers would be if the two numbers have opposite signs, we subtract and take the sign of the larger number. And what we're really talking about is the sign with a larger absolute value. So if I was adding a positive and a negative number, I would subtract the two numbers, get my answer, and then I would use the sign of the number with a greater absolute value. So if you need to see more examples of that, there's a lesson on adding integers. But now let's go ahead and assume that we've all practiced adding integers and look at subtracting integers. And subtracting integers is the same as adding the opposite. Subtracting integers is the same as adding the opposite. So 10 minus 4 is equal to 10 plus negative 4. So let's write down these steps for subtracting integers. Steps to subtract integers. Step 1, we're going to rewrite the first number. And if we wanted to put that in one word, that is our keep. Step 2 is to change the operation sign from subtraction to addition. That's the change. Step 3 is to change the second number to its opposite. If it's negative, change it to positive. If it's positive, change it to negative. That is the flip. So our first three steps are keep, change, and flip. The first number stays the same. That's the keep. Change is we're going to change the operation sign from subtraction to addition. And 3, the flip, we're going to change the sign of the number to its opposite. If it's negative, we're going to make it positive. If it's positive, we're going to make it negative. So what keep, change, flip does is it changes our subtraction problem into adding the opposite. Remember, we started with subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. And now if we've taken these 3 steps to make it into an addition sentence, our last step is just to follow the rules for adding integers and solve. So keep, change, flip will change our subtraction to an addition problem. And then we're just going to use the rules we're already familiar with adding integers. So let's look at a couple examples here. We have negative 9 minus negative 7. So we're going to keep negative 9 the same. Step 1, first number stays the same. Change, we're going to flip the sign from subtract to add. And then we're going to take the opposite of the second number. The opposite of negative 7 is positive 7. So subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. So I have negative 9 plus positive 7. Now, when I'm adding integers, I'm following my rules for adding integers. They have two different signs, negative 9 and positive 7. So I subtract the 9 minus 7 to get 2. And then I'm going to take the sign with the greater absolute value. Well, 9 has a greater absolute value, so I'm going to use the sign from the 9, and my answer is going to be negative 2. All right, let's look at another example. Let's say I have negative 12 minus 9. I'm going to do keep, change, flip, or I'm going to do add the opposite to change this to an addition problem. Negative 12 stays the same. I change from subtract to add, and then the opposite of positive 9 is negative 9. So I have negative 12 plus negative 9. Then my adding integers rules say if I have a negative plus a negative, the signs are the same. I'm going to add them together and keep that common sign. It's kind of like if I lost 12 yards playing football, then the next play I lose 9 yards, I've now lost 21 yards. So keep, change, flip just changes my subtraction to addition. Then I use the addition rules to solve. How about 13 minus 19? Will that be the same as 13 plus negative 19? The signs the same or different? Well, they're different, so I'm going to subtract 19 minus 13 to get 6. And I'm going to use the sign from the 19 because 19 has a greater absolute value than 13. How about negative 9 minus negative 17? Well, we got a bunch of negatives in here. So the first number always stays the same. That's the keep. We're going to change from subtraction to addition. That's the change. And the flip, the opposite of negative 17, is positive 17. Now using my rules for addition, I'm adding a negative and a positive, so I subtract the number part to get 8, and I use the sign with a greater absolute value. 17 has a greater absolute value, so my answer will be positive 8. So we have a word problem here. Frank has 75 points, then he loses 100 points. How many points does Frank have? Now, well, Frank, let's see. We had 75, and we lost 100. So it's 75 minus 100. As addition, that'd be the same as 75 plus negative 100. I subtract 100 minus 75 to get 25, and I'm going to use the sign with the greater absolute value. And that makes sense. If I had 75 points and I lost 100, I'm now below 0. I'm 25 points below 0. It would take me 25 points just to get up to break even. So subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. The day starts at 10 degrees Celsius and drops 15 degrees. What is the temperature now? Well, 10 degrees drops 15. So that's like 10 minus 15 degrees. Be the same as 10 plus negative 15. Subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. Then we're adding two different signs. So if I add a positive and a negative, I subtract the number part and use the sign of the greater absolute value. It's negative 5. So if I looked at my thermometer here, it's starting at 10 degrees, and if it drops 15, it drops 5, 10, 15 degrees. We're at negative 5 degrees on the thermometer. All right, here's a chance for you guys to try a mix of subtracting integers and adding integer problems. So go ahead, pause the video here, try these, and come back and see how you did. Okie doke, welcome back. Let's solve here. So the first one, negative 9 plus positive 17, is already addition. So I can add a negative 9 and positive 17, subtract 17 minus 9 is 8, and use the sign of the greater absolute value. 22 minus negative 6, I'm going to change that to addition first. It's 22 plus positive 6 is 28. 28 plus negative 11 is already addition, so I can just go ahead and solve with my adding rules. Subtract 28 minus 11 and get 17. Use the sign with the greater absolute value as positive. Negative 29 minus negative 8 is the same as negative 29 plus positive 8. And if I'm adding a positive and negative number, I subtract the number part and use the sign with the greater absolute value to get negative 21. 19 minus 23 is the same as 19 plus negative 23, or negative 4. And my last problem, negative 9 plus negative 15, is already addition, so I could just add a negative plus a negative, stays negative, add them up and get negative 24. And I hope that helps you guys put together those rules for subtracting integers. Have a great day. OUT spells out.